All right, so for chapter 12, we're going to do things a little bit differently because there's a file that we need that is not in the chapter 12 zip files. I'll double check since this is maybe a different set of zip files from last week, but last week we were definitely missing these files. So what I'm going to do is same thing we've been doing. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to park this differently right up here. And I'm going to delete everything from my eProjects folder, at least as far as that 220 project is concerned. And really, anytime you're taking any of the FDOT training, especially in the districts, that 220 project is used for just about everything. So whenever you get on a machine in the districts or anywhere taking the FDOT training, go to the eProjects folder, find that 220 project and just delete it, because there's no telling what's going on in that project. Could be good, could be bad, but we'll go ahead and delete that. And then we'll take a look at the chapter 12 zip files. We're going to extract those. So we'll take the whole folder just like we've been doing. And you'll want to dig into that deep enough so that you don't have the 12 in parentheses. So you're just copying a 220 folder. And when you drag and drop that or copy and paste, whatever you're doing, it's enough files that you should see the progress bar. If you don't see the progress bar, it didn't copy all the files. So what we've done so far, James, is we just extracted the chapter 12, but we're going to probably steal a file from 13 because we're missing one. Right at this point right now, we're only at the point where we've gotten the chapter 12 files and deleted our old files. So I'm going to take a look in the 220 folder, and there's a roadway profile that we draw on top of when we run the profile tool in chapter 12. If you look in your roadway folder, what you're going to see is there is not a DSPF RD01 in that folder. So there's not a roadway profile to draw on top of. And we're going to need that because the drainage profile tool that we're going to use, it looks for that profile cell in order to orient itself in the drawing. Now we could go through placing a profile cell and do all of that, but we really want to draw it on top of the roadway profile. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go into the chapter 13 zip files, and don't take the whole folder, but dig into it and go into the roadway folder, and you want to take the DSPF RD01 file from the roadway folder in the chapter 13 zip files, and you want to put it into your roadway folder. So you've got chapter 12 and we're adding to it one file. And what we'll do is we'll open up that file. So we'll do all this before we even start the chapter. And we're going to match some of the symbology that's in that completed file so that we can save a file to load up in this profile tool. And then we'll delete the items that the profile tool should draw for us in a few moments once we get to that part of chapter 12. So we got the chapter 12 files, and then we're taking the DSPF RD01 from chapter 13, and we're putting it into our roadway folder. So far, so good? So it happens to be missing that file in the chapter 12 zip files.
That's the file you want us to open?
Yep.
Access?
Yes, sir. So once we have those files copied, and none of this is in chapter 12, we're just doing this to make things right, you're going to open up that DSPF RD01 file. And I could have missed it somewhere here in chapter 12 where that file is created or something, but I don't see any steps for that, and I sure don't see it in the chapter 12 roadway folder. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am, but never know. So for the first time, you're not going to open a DRP RRD. You're going to go up one folder. You're going to go into roadway, and you're going to open up the DSPFRD01 file.
Say that one more time. I'm still loading.
Yeah.
That's okay. You're going to go into your roadway folder, so you'll go up one folder. You'll go into roadway, and you'll open up the DSPFRD01 file.
The one we just copied in?
Yes, sir. So this file that you have is going to be the file that we'll end up with. We'll end up back with this file being complete in 45 minutes or some rough period of time. So this file, you can see essentially the end results that we should get are going to be similar to what you see in this file if you hit Fit View. It's going to have some of the drainage structures along the main line of the roadway, which is from the Plans Prep Manual rules, drawn in here. Now, the tool itself probably won't draw everything in here as clean as this has. We may have to tweak and work a little bit with the text size. Even when the tool works, it's not going to be perfect. You may still have to go in and clean up a little bit of text here to actually have something on your plan sheet. But for the most part, the tool that we're going to run is going to produce the drainage structures along this main line here. That's what we're shooting for. The problem is that, one, the tool doesn't have the right symbology settings when you first open it up, and two, this file is already complete. We don't even get to see it work or see if it works. So what we're going to do is you're going to go over to your drainage plans task that we had yesterday, and we want to open up, before we delete anything, we want to open up this third icon in the drainage plans. So you're under the FDOT plans development, you're under drainage plans, and you're clicking this third icon, draw drainage profiles. And that should run. Bob did get this fixed up yesterday, or not. All right, okay, looks like we got a fix here. All right, so if everyone would please, I think we can walk through it together. And since we've got it recorded, we'll have another copy of a fix. So go and click on the third icon here in the drainage plans task. You're going to get that compile error. Click OK to that. And then on that dialog box, click the little blue square. That'll stop the program from running. It's going to be toward the upper left. And I can probably get back to that dialog. So it's this guy right here. Oh, actually says, I'm sorry, it does say reset.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Okay. That's where you want to be.
So you'll click on that.
Then go to Tools, References. And you're going to see one that says Missing. Uncheck that missing one.
Yeah, so once you click play, it's going to say cannot save changes. Just go ahead and hit yes. And then just go straight to save and hit yes. It'll override it.
Boom. That's what I was doing. Click OK.
Yeah, you'll get that same error, and then if you click the icon again, it should come up and run. So when you get that runtime error or whatever it was, click OK to that. But what's happening there, if you go ahead and click on the third icon in Drainage Plans, it should open now. This form in this section here where it has the node, the station, and offset, there's a piece of Excel that's used there that the programmers are calling up to give like the little grid display there. It's not finding that piece, so it just won't bring up the whole dialog, which you probably don't care anything about. You just want the dialog, and that's fine. So does everyone have the dialog now? Okay. So on this dialog, we're going to run it in a minute and reproduce these items that are in the profile drawing. But the dialog, when you first open up this tool, it does not have the preferences set to the drainage preferences. So before we delete anything in the drainage file, we're going to go ahead and match some of that symbology so that we have a file of preferences that we can load later, and it'll look essentially like what we have in this completed file. So, and you would do this on a real project. When you first open up this tool, it's not going to have the right CAD symbology. So what we're going to do is down in the bottom left of this, we're going to click Preferences. And then it has preferences for the node dimensions, the node box symbology, node level symbology, flow line dimensions, flow line symbology, pipe label dimensions, and the pipe label symbology. So it has a lot of symbology settings in it. And what we're going to do, we'll have to end up playing around a little bit with the node dimensions when we actually run the tool, because those settings aren't quite right in there. I don't remember what the numbers that work correctly and give you this same look are, so we'll have to kind of play around with those. And then we're going to start on the left-hand side. We're not going to do anything yet in node dimensions, but we're going to click on node box symbology. And there's two icons at the bottom here. The one button on the bottom right that has 3 painters palette is going to set all the preferences to one single symbology. So what you would do is you would set the symbology that you want to use. You hit that button in the bottom right, and all the other symbology preferences get set to that same symbology. That's generally not going to be what you want to do. We're going to set them all individually. So we're going to click the button here that has the 2 painters palettes on it. It says Match Attributes of an Element. You're going to click on that, and since this is a node box symbology, you're going to click on one of these ellipses around the name of one of the structures. So you'll just click on it once to highlight it, and you'll click once in a blank space to accept it. And if you're not a long-time MicroStation user, that's the general behavior with all the MicroStation commands. If you're picking something, and this includes GEOPAK drainage, you click on it once to highlight, and then you do another click in a blank area to accept something. It seems like you double click on things to highlight and accept them, which will work, but it's really one click to highlight, and then another click somewhere off of that to accept. So we're going to click on this yellow ellipse once, click off of it, it's going to load up the symbology. And then you're going to move down to the node label symbology, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to click the 2 little painters palettes, and you're going to click on one of the structure names. It's going to highlight, and you're going to click off of the structure, and it's going to read up that symbology. Flow line dimensions, you can probably leave that as it is. And then for flow line symbology, you're going to click on the 2 painters palettes, and you're going to click on, or the flow line symbology, it's going to be your FL. It's going to be on the level text miscellaneous bi-level color line weight style. Pipe symbology, 2 painters palettes, click on either the top or bottom of the pipe. They should be, yeah, there's not separate levels for top and bottoms of pipes, thankfully. So either top or bottom of the pipe should be fine. Pipe label dimensions, you could probably leave that alone. And then for the pipe label symbology, click the 2 painters palettes, and then click on one of the pipe labels, 18-inch pipe, 24, whatever they happen to be. I think they're almost all 18 here. Might be a 30 that sneaks in somewhere. So this tool, when you first open it, you're going to have to set up the symbology just like we did here. Best way to do it is open up some completed file that already has the drainage structures in it, which we were able to kind of cheat and do from chapter 13. And then to save these, the first button here is open a settings file. So once you've saved, you do not have to have a completed file in order to do what we just did. It's going to start from scratch. Now it does load up this DPS file when it starts up, but it's not correct when it loads up. So that's why we're going in here and changing it. If we didn't change it, everything, when we ran the tool in a little bit, it would just all lumped it right on the default level. So what I would recommend is if you click this icon here, Save Settings, it's going to save this drain profile settings file. So from then on, hopefully, I'm taking a chance here, I closed out of it. It should remember it from then on. But you are going to have to set it up at least once. Or you're going to take your thumb drive if you have it with you, and you're going to steal this drain profile settings DPS file from that machine. Yeah, the double save thing is to save settings to another file. And this file, I think, was in our Chapter 12 zip file, but as I recall, I don't think it was set up right either. And the 3 3¼ inch floppy lives on in these icons. So it's about the only place
you can save that file on your server and access it each time you start a new project or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it should remember once you've picked the file once, it should remember it. Yeah, you're probably going to have to build this thing manually at least once. Now, I'm not sure if there's a version of this that's installed with the FDOT 2004 or SS4 maintenance release, but I'll let my computer search through there. That way, if you do get you a good copy of this file and you're updating or installing SS4, it's probably, if it's out there somewhere as a default, it's going to be in the C FDOT SS4 folder somewhere. I'm not sure if it's one that gets thrown over. I just know the one that's in Chapter 12 is not correct. All right, and once you do load it up, I don't think you'll have to continually load that again. I've closed out of it completely. If I reopen it and I go back to Preferences, it did go ahead and save them. So you shouldn't have to, once you've got one, you shouldn't have to hit open and go out and pick the file and load it. It should remember. All right, so we were fortunate. We had a whole completed file we could cheat from. So what we're going to do now is we're going to delete out the drainage pieces, and toward the end of Chapter 12, we'll go ahead and use that tool to draw them in. We will have a couple of trial and errors because the settings for the node cells and the shape, I don't remember exactly what those should be. So there will be one more setting that we'll have to tweak on the preferences here, and it'll have to do with the node box and the cell symbology in there. So once you've got that set up, you can close it. We'll get to use it in a moment in this same file. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete out all of the drainage structures in this file, and then we can draw them back in and see if we get something reasonable. However you want to delete them is fine. If you want to go by level, you can pick by level, and I think you'll be safe. The bubbles are on the text details level, and so are the pipe labels. And by the way, on this pull down for element selection, it does honor the level filters. So if you were to set your level filter to used levels, it thins out that list really nicely for you. So text details, from what I can tell, is only highlighting items that relate to the drainage structures. So you're safe to pick that whole level, hit the delete key on your keyboard, and they're all gone. The other level is drain structure _PR. That one you're definitely safe to pick the whole level and delete it. And then the last one is text miscellaneous. And you're safe to pick that whole level and delete it. And I know that feels very backwards, because we have a completed file, it's good to go, and we just completely got rid of everything. But to go through the motions, make sure the tool is absolutely working for us. We don't want to draw stuff on top of other stuff. I did have 2 of everything. Someone. Yeah. James, I guess James was probably deleting them manually. It had 2 of everything drainage structure wise in that file. So we won't charge you any extra for that. Sir. So your level filter is probably not turned on by default, but if you go up to where the level default is up here in your top menu, if you right click, you can check on the active level filter, and then once that level filter pops up, Todd, you can hit the pull down on it and pick used, which is towards the very bottom, used levels. And then that's going to thin out anywhere that levels appear, level manager, level display, and the element selection. Yeah, maybe a better or different way to do this, if you right click and hold down your right mouse button, you can say select on all on level by element, and you click the element. And really what it does is it goes over here to element selection and tags that level. Now, I sometimes forget to show the filter or any of the other tools because, unfortunately, I've gotten real good at scrolling through the levels real quick and reading them, which is not the most efficient use of our tools. Yeah, but if you get quick enough doing that, it's about the same. So yeah, old habits do die hard, as well as old CAD people. So, whenever it did get run in Chapter 12, it was ran twice. Okay. All right, so hit File Save Settings just in case. I think everyone did go to Workspace Preferences yesterday and check Save Settings on Exit. That is another option. That only saves settings when you exit, though. It doesn't save settings if you haven't exited and it decides to crash. So it's still worth hitting File Save Settings once in a while. All right, so sorry we had to do a little bit of doctoring up on that file to get it into shape for Chapter 12, but we'll run that. We'll be back in that file in a minute. But if you look on page 12.3, we're going to go ahead and start looking at a tool for renumbering nodes. I don't believe that we'll need that tool, but we want to at least show it to you. What it does is it renumbers nodes, and it renumbers them in station order along the main alignment. So you can, just like we worked with any CAD symbology that we wanted, and we'll be able to override that later, we can work with whatever node numbering we want to have, and then we can renumber them real easily later. And it does also renumber the areas associated with the nodes. So it's not where you have to renumber the nodes and the areas. So we're going to go back now into our DRPRRD file. You can either do File Open, or it should be in one of your most recently used list. You may get this unable to access feature database. If you do, just click OK. It's talking about the survey features. You don't need to even think about it other than hitting OK there, if you get that message. All right, so back in our DRPRRD file, you'll see once again that, excuse me, we really don't have to do steps 2 through 5 here. We don't have to open up the Road Project Manager and go through all of that just so our project will access the right GPK file. You may want to just quickly double check, though, that your drainage file is open to the SR61 GDF. You can tell that from the top of the menu bar. And then, if you haven't already, go to your project preferences and open up those preferences that we've been saving in eProjects, if you need to. If you happen to load it twice, won't hurt anything. Just click OK and you won't get prompted since it's the same. So we'll get everyone back in the proposed drainage structures file, this DRRPRD01. And you'll want to be back in your SR61 drainage project. Has everyone used the easiest way to ask and show, has everyone used this tool before? The Plan View Labeler? Okay, that's okay. There's 3 labelers like this. There's a Plan View Labeler, there's a cross-section labeler, and then there's a drainage labeler. They all have this same general look to the dialog box.
Where do we find that?
You actually will not want that one. You will want to go to Utilities and go to Labeler here. So go to your drainage menu and go to Utilities Labeler.
But if we were to want to use that other one, where was it?
It's sorry, GEOPAK Road Plans Preparation Plan View Labeling.
Perfect. Cool, thank you.
Yeah, and
Seems useful.
yeah, it's smart enough. If you snap to an element and you label a station and offset, and that element moves, there's a tool in there called Label Updater that will find the labels that have changed and let you click through and update them automatically. Yep, so that's the Plan View Labeler. The dialog box that's used in that is exactly the same as the drainage labeler, so you can't open both at the same time. Yeah. You're in roadway or you're in drainage. You can't do both, even though they usually are related somehow, hopefully. All right, so on your drainage labeler, on the left-hand side, it's kind of like a mini navigator that we looked at yesterday in Chapter 8. You have areas, you have a button for inlets, you have a button for nodes, and then you have a button for links. And we'll get to use a couple of them. So the one that we're going to start out using here, and this is on page 12.5, is going to be the node. So you're going to click on the node icon, and that's only going to show the nodes here that are in that particular network that we have. You have an option for highlighting and window centering. So that's where it sort of works like a mini navigator. And then over to the right-hand side of these 4 icons, there's also this select drainage element. And it lets you go out. It will only let you pick elements that you have pressed here. But I can click another node. You have to click it once to highlight and then again to accept it, and it'll tell you what node that is. Now, we already know that's 201, but if that level's off, you can click on Select Drainage Element, click some other node twice, and it'll tell you what that node is and window center and highlight it if you need it to. Now, what we're trying to do here is we're actually going to build the label from scratch. And in order to save that label, you have to place at least one copy of it in the file for it to save. So we're going to go through most of these tabs that we have on this tool. There's text, there's parameters, there's shape, there's leader, there's rotate, and there's styles. One thing about this tool is on these machines you're perfectly fine, because if you were to go to style files, all of these machines are pointing to the local directory. If you're in the district or you're at a consultancy, this is probably another file that's usually on a server somewhere. So if you're going to make changes to it, you have to go to the Styles tab, and you want to click Style Files, Save As, and save a copy of it in your drainage folder or wherever a good location is, a common location. You don't have to worry about that on these machines, but in general, that file is usually a file that's out on a server. So we won't save a copy of it here, but when you do go and save it, you have to be on the Styles tab to click Styles and do a new and open. You don't have to necessarily be on Styles to do save and save as. But this would be a good file that as soon as you go into it, If you think you're going to make changes, hit Style File, Save As, and then throw it out in your drainage folder somewhere, or some convenient location you can reuse it later. All right. And if you want to do that, that's fine. If you want to hit Style Files from the menu on this and do a Save As, absolutely not going to hurt anything to put this in your drainage folder if you would like to. Now, even though this is a drainage file or drainage labeling, the drainage labels are contained in the roadway label styles file or LSF file. So if you wanted to, we won't call this roadway anymore. There we go. Why is it not? If you have not done a save as on that, has anyone not done the save as already? Okay. What is it pointing to? If you look across the top of the menu bar for this. Good. That's where it should be pointing. What I think happened on mine, and I'm about to mess it up again, is if you open up this plan view labeler, it's going to point to roadway, and then if I go to utilities labeler from drainage, of course it just made a liar out of me. That's fine. It should be pointing to the DRPRRD LSF, which matches the drawing name that you're in when you're in the structure drawing for drainage. And you'll see that in the book if you look at that screenshot on step 2. Then just to make sure everything's working right, go to Style Files, pick Open, and browse out to the C drive under FDOT SS4, and then go into GEOPAK bin, and then pick that first LSF file in there, the DRPRRD. That should have been the one it opened up to begin with, and mine probably was fine. It was when I opened up that roadway labeler that I might have messed it up. All right, so with this pointing to the DRPRRD LSF file, if you wanted to, you could save a copy of it out in your drainage folder. I'll go ahead and do that just real quick. Style File, Save As, and then I'll put a copy of it in my drainage folder. You don't have to do that, but in most cases, you are going to make changes to the label styles file, and most of the time it's going to point to a server file. And I know for a fact the plan view labeler and probably this one, it will let you go through and create new styles. It'll save them. It'll let you use them, and it will keep it in the dialog box as if that file's saved, even though it's out on the server, until you close it and reopen it, and then whatever changes you've made are going to be gone. This will give you the same look and feel as if you've saved and created new labels, even though the file's out on the server and read-only, and then when you reopen it, everything you've created is gone. So you're definitely better off to just jump in here and save a copy of it in a generic directory that you're going to reuse for other projects, or in the drainage folder for this particular project. All right, so we'll go ahead and start here back on our text tab, and you're going to click on the node icon, and you're going to see the different nodes in the project. These nodes are already numbered in station order, but if you flip back for just a moment here to page 12.4, I want to at least show you the renumbering option or renumbering tool. So you can leave the labeler open, and if you go to your utilities menu, actually it's component node, here it is. It's component node and then renumber. So this is the tool. We'll just look at it real briefly here on 12.4, but it lets you pick the job number, which ours is 00. It lets you pick the chain, and that's your mainline chain. In this case, that's called SR61. It lets you set a station range to search. and then it lets you set a search distance left and right from that chain in order to go out and find drainage structures. So the number that's used here is 100 left and right. It does default to 1, which won't find a whole heck of a lot of anything. And that's probably not a bad rule of thumb, because what you generally don't want it to do is you don't want to go out far enough left and right so it's finding structures that are really on the side streets, because you want to number them sequentially along your main line. Now, if this is a 4-lane divided highway or something, this number here might have to be a couple of 100 feet left and right. But you set the search distance, and then you click Find. And it's going to go through, and we may run it just to be absolutely safe here. It's going to go through, and it's going to show you the current ID of the nodes, and it's going to show you what station they're at. And we'll run it just to be absolutely sure. We'll play it safe here. So it should find, I start out at S200, and it just goes sequentially on up to 215. And then on the right-hand side is the renumbering part. This is not undoable. This is another really good time if we're working with a real project where we don't have 20 zip files containing all the pieces of our project. This is a good time to make a copy of that GDF file, which, to be fair, in the book, it's right there on 12.4 in this grayed out section that says warning. This is a good time to make a copy of your GDF file, because you're not going to be able to undo it if you renumber these and mess it up. So the way it works is we tell it what number we want to start with. So in this upper right, we'll tell it we want to go with 200. And then you have to select all of these nodes on the left-hand side. And then you click Renumber Nodes. Now when it does that, it does rebuild the network so that the network has the new numbering of the nodes for you. So you'll get this warning during network computations, and it's going to ask you, do you want to view warnings? We'll just say no, and it will have gone through and renumbered these nodes if needed in station order along that mainline alignment. So if you wanted to, you could always start with node S1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, not worry about them at all during the design, because you have this renumber nodes tool to number them in station order the way that we would prefer that they are. Okay, so I didn't want to skip that, so that's why we flip back there for a moment. And then you can close that. There is no undo with that if you mess it up. That's why you'd make a backup copy of your GDF file. All right, so back to the labeler here. I'm going to go ahead and open up the style file that I saved in my drainage folder. You are perfectly fine to work with the one that you have on the C drive. Normally, though, it will go ahead and open up a file that's out on the server. So what we have here is we're looking at the text tab here on page 12.5. We're clicking on nodes. These nodes have now been renumbered. And we want to build a label for S200. So we're going to left click on S200. If you have the window center and highlight toggled on, it will center the view and highlight on that structure. And then on the right hand side next to element ID, you're going to see computed text. And what it's showing here in the computed text is it's showing all the different variables and pieces, all the information about that node S200 that we might want to label. Now for this node, really the only thing that we want to label here in step 4 is the node ID. So you're going to double click on node ID, and that's going to push that over to that right hand side, which is, it's sort of like a text preview window. And what we'll do is we want to set the symbology for that text, and that's what's happening here on this parameters or params tab. So you're going to click on the params tab, and in order to set the symbology, you're going to double click on this word sample. Now that's going to come up, and it's going to initially be pointing to the default level. You're going to set that level to text label. If you hit the letter T, it'll get you pretty close. And your color and weight are going to be by level. And your text height and width are going to change from 1 to a 4. Check, if you don't have text label, check your level filters. Easy way to check the level filters is click on level display, which is this. You'll have to close out this little dialog first, but if you click on level display, which is the little yellow stack of folders, hit your pull down for the filter, and just, if you want to, you can just pick all levels. Okay, and just kind of a side note on the filters. When you open up a drawing in the FDOT workspace, it automatically grabs the level filter for that particular type of drawing. So if you're referencing in something and you need to turn levels on and off on that, you may have to, I usually set it to all levels or used levels, but when you first open up any drawing in the FDOT workspace, it'll set the filter to whatever the proper filter is for that drawing. In this case, that would be the DRPRRD, and sometimes it doesn't include the levels that you need. So this sample, if you double click on it, you're going to set that to text label, and then the color and weight is going to be by level. The text height and width are going to be 4. And then to set the justification, this is not really intuitive. You actually click in this little window here where it says set justification, and you'll see this little dot move around. And we're going to end up setting it to a center justification. So as you click in this little set justification window, you're going to click just about right in the middle of that M, and you'll see the dot move. And then you're also going to choose the FDOT bold font. I think your font will default to 0. It'll say font 000. You're going to hit that pull down, and the sorting order on this leaves a lot to be desired. If you scroll down about a third of the way, you'll find FDOT bold. I think we need a font filter. But you'll eventually find FDOT bold. So we'll leave that up there. We'll let everyone match that. And then once we all match that, we'll hit OK, and we'll see the preview update. So I'm going to click OK. You'll see that preview update. In general, in GEOPAK, anytime you see a background window like this with the word sample in it, you can double click on it and set text parameters. Anytime you see a window like this with line work in it, you can usually double click in that window and set the symbology for line work. There's a little cheat you can do here. That shape is going to go on the same level. So if you hover over sample here on parameters and right click, dialog is the same as double clicking. It gets you that dialog. By current sets that symbology to whatever your current microstation settings are. By element lets you go out and click on an element and match that element. Or you can do copy, and then when we go over to the shape tab and we pick this ellipse shape here at the top of page 12.6, we can right click on that line symbology there and say paste. We don't have to fill out the level, color, line, weight, and style again. So as soon as I right click there and do paste, you may have to go back to the parameters tab and then click on the shape tab to get that preview to update, but then you'll see a little thicker white line on the symbology there. And we also want to put in an offset here of 1. The offset is the offset between the text and the shape. So you're gonna use 1 there. Now there was a line spacing setting back here on the parameters tab. I just left it set at 1. The book has it at 2. There's not going to be multiple lines on this label, so I don't need to set the line spacing. All right, so your leader here, if you go to step 7 on the middle of page 12.6, this will not have a leader. It's just going to be just a little bubble. So the leader type is going to be the first button, which is no leader. And the terminator, doesn't matter what you set the terminator to really, but it's also set to the first button, which is no terminator. Symbology for that, if we did have a leader, would be the same. We don't have one, but if you want to get some practice, you can right click and do paste there, and that would update a leader line if we had a leader. And then finally, or almost finally, you've got a rotate tab. I think for everyone, I think your label, your sample output, is it rotated correctly? It's readable, it's good. If it's ever not, you click on this little button here, current angle, and you can set the angle to whatever you want it to be. You can set the angle by DP, which lets you click 2 places out in the drawing and rotate it. You can set the angle by an element, and you can pick on an element that's appropriate and set the angle, or you can do active angle. When you are using this labeler, its angle is relative to the view, so your best bet is rotate the view so that most of your labels are going to read correctly. And that's why this view is rotated so it's reading left and right station-wise. North is actually, I think, over to our right, because that's the direction stationing is going in. Usually stationing is bigger to the north and bigger to the east. All right, so now that we have this all set up, we have to place at least one copy of this label in our file in order to save the style. So we're going to zoom in where S200 is. I'm going to turn back on that miscellaneous level, that miscellaneous 0. And I'm going to, from my text tab, I'm going to click place label. And I'm going to just go ahead and put this little balloon out here near S200, wherever you want to place that. So one click, you could go out here and label others if you wish to. The nice part about this label is if you click on S201 or 202 or 203, you can see how it changes the label automatically for you. You don't have to type. It's not a big deal to type it, but it's easier just to click. So you can click on S201, center it up on your screen, put your label out there, and once you've put the label in the file, now we can save it here in step 10, 11, and 12. So if you go to your Styles tab, and you've got to go to your Styles tab to save this, and you have to click on this folder. You have to tell it what folder to save the new style in. So you have to click on the Labels folder before New Style is going to light up. If you want to place it in your own category, you can pick New Category and create another folder if you wanted to. So I'm just going to let it just be in this Labels folder. I'm going to hit New Style. And for the style name, what do they call it? It just says provide a style name. Okay. Node. It does force you to place at least one of these in the drawing before it'll let you save it. And I'm just calling mine node ID, and I'm leaving the scale at 1. And I'll click OK. Now I should have node ID out there, and I can reuse that whenever I want to. A lot of times when you save it, the style when it previews, the rotation will be messed up on it. Don't worry about it. It's probably fine. What's going to matter is what the rotate tab is set to. So a lot of times this style preview won't look quite right. I'm not sure if I do, and you probably don't want to try this. I'm going to just save this file and reopen the labeler. It still may have the preview rotated there on that style. Don't even worry about it. It's fine. Now sometimes you already have a style in here and you want to modify it. So if you have a style, and there are some built-in ones here, there's a link label style, there's a node ID that we just created, a structure ID. So there really already was a structure ID. But if you do find a label that's in either this one or the plan view labeler, and you want to start out with that one and edit it, what you do is you go to the Styles tab here and double click to activate that label, and then you can go here and you can make any changes that you want to. So maybe I put some kind of weird offset here, 5 on this, oh, that was line spacing, sorry. Maybe I put 5 on the offset. So I make some type of change to this label that's already existing. I still have to place one copy of it in the drawing, and then I can go to Styles, and it gives you the option to update the style. So if you have a label that's pretty close, double click on it on the Styles tab, go ahead and make whatever changes you want, place a new copy of it out there in the file, and you get an update style option. So now if I hit update style, it gives you the original, it gives you the changed one, and now every time that I use this label here, now it has that 5 offset that I put in on the shape. So if you got one that's close, which you usually will, double click on it to activate it, make whatever changes you want to make, place at least one copy in the drawing, and then you'll have the option to update that style. The update and the rotation of the style preview for me, it almost always looks a little messed up. It doesn't seem to hurt anything. They're generally rotated a little bit if your drawing's rotated. Main thing is what the rotation is set to on that rotate tab. And these labels, they are just graphical elements that are placed in the drawing. So if you don't like one, you can delete it. You can hit Control Z to get rid of them. You can move them around. They're really just graphical elements that are placed in the drawing. Looks like I just lost my, no, that looks all right. Thought I lost the line thickness on that bubble. So go ahead and do a quick save on that. And we'll take a quick break and we'll come back, we'll label the pipe, and then eventually in just a few minutes here we'll get into running that profile tool. So take a quick break, do make sure you hit Style Files, Save, and then just take a quick 10-minute break or less, and then we'll label a pipe, and we'll run our profile tool and finish up Chapter 12 in probably just 15 minutes or so. So quick break, I'll go ahead and pause this recording. All right, so I need to reopen my drawing. I was checking a couple of things for Chapter 14. We probably will hit a couple of little snags there, but I don't think it's anything we won't be able to get around and show you the process. So we'll pick it up here on page 12.7, and we're going to go ahead and we'll label at least a pipe or two. It's going to be the same general procedure. We will build the label from scratch, but there is in that label styles file that we open, there is an existing label that we could modify if we wanted to. Once we do that, then we'll go over to 12.9. That's where hopefully we'll be able to draw back in that profile information for our drainage structures that we deleted out of that roadway design file. So we're still in the DRPRRD file. I'll reopen my SR61 drainage project, load the preferences, and we'll be good to go. All right, so back in the labeler where y'all are probably still sitting, I was talking with James at break, and the styles preview, it is reading from your currently rotated view. So most of the time it's not going to look correct. So unless you are in your view window an unrotated view, that's when these style previews will always look correct and read directly left to right. So if you're building styles, it's up to you. You may want to unrotate the view, and then at that point save the style file, and then maybe the style previews will stick at least for a little bit. But most of the time, because you're hardly ever going to have an alignment that's going due north exactly, most of the time your view And I assume everyone knows how to rotate the view to align. If you don't, I'm clicking on the rotate view icon, the icon next to the little hand icon. And I'm setting my method to 2 points. And the first point you click is like a rotation point. And then you get this little dashed line coming off of that. And then this line, if you look down at the bottom left of MicroStation, it'll say define x-axis of view. And I'll be honest, it took me a couple of months to figure out how this worked, because I never looked down at the bottom and read the stuff I was supposed to. So this line becomes my new left and right on screen. So if I go up here and click on 702, I'm aligned perfectly with that tangent that's part of my drawing. And now everything here on the rotate is crooked. Most of the time it will be. You're hardly ever, if you're labeling, you're hardly ever not in a rotated view. So we've got it back reading left and right station-wise. And we're going to create, even though we have this link label here, we'll create our own to show you how to go through the motions. So at the top of page 12.7, you are back on the text tab. I'm going to make sure that I'm in my drainage LSF file that I saved and created, which I should be. Yeah, it looks like we're good. And now we're clicking on the link icon. So we're going to create a label that goes along with a link. And we'll just pick pipe 200 for that. And then what you're going to see in the computed text section is you're going to see all the different items that we could label that relate to the pipe or relate to the link. So I'm going to left click on link and I'm going to find the length. It'll say link actual length. And when you click on this, you're going to see there's a number here with a little pull down arrow next to it that lets you control how many decimal places you get for this. This is a 18-inch reinforced concrete pipe. 0 decimal places, even feet, is just perfectly fine. So you should get on pipe 200, I get 207, or excuse me, 107 even. And now that I've set the decimal places, I double click on the link, actual length, and that pushes that up in that upper right hand side for me. And what I want to do is I want to add the foot tick mark after that 107. They don't do it in the book and they have 106, whatever. I want to add the foot tick mark, and I'm typing in that upper right hand side. So I did the foot tick mark, I'm typing of, and then a space. So I'm building the label in that upper right hand side. And then I want to label the size of this. So I'm going to click on link library item, and it's going to pull up the size of that pipe, 18 inches. And I'll double click on that. It's going to put the 18 inches up there, but it's filling it in from the element itself. And then I'm going to type space and then PIPE. And just to test this before we go any further with it, I'm going to click on a couple of the other pipes and make sure that it's reading the length on those pipes. Now the 18 part is probably not going to change. It's not because it shouldn't be because it's broken. It's because I think all of these are 18-inch pipes. Is 211 a good one? Gotcha. Thank you. Darn, not 12, Alvie. 11. There we go. Yeah, that one's a 30-inch pipe. So always good to check it. And you do always want to check that, because if you backspace over, like if I backspaced over the 7 and then type 7 back in, that 7 is like hard coded. Yeah. And I've done that a bunch of times. That's really the reason I always check it, is I mess it up a lot. So that's why I check it. So it should change the length, and if you pick our friend to your pipe 211, you should get 30-inch pipe. All right, so it's working. Now we need to set the symbology for these items. So step number 5, that one's going to be our parameters. What do we want our label to be? So the label, this is, once again, this is going on that text label level. So if you have one of your structure labels out here, you can right-click over sample. You may not even have to do that, but you can right-click over sample and say by element, and then just go double-click on one of those and it'll match it up here. Oh, I guess I messed one up earlier, so I'm going to need to double-click, and I'll set that to text label. And it's by level color, by level weight, height and width here. It just it doesn't show, but I'm going to leave it at 4. It's probably fine. And the font should hold for you as well. So that is going to be, if you hover over it, it's text label. They have it at a color by level, FDOT bold font, and it's a weight of 2, but that's also by level. Line spacing, they have it 2 in the book. Doesn't matter because there's not more than one line in that upper preview window. And if you click on the shape tab, there is not a shape that's going to go around this. So you'll click the first icon there. Here at the bottom of 12.7, we're not putting a shape around it. So we should be good there. This will have a leader, and that leader is at the top of page 12.8, and it's also on that same level. So for your leader line, you're picking a leader type is the third icon. It's a 2-point leader.